A runaway girl found the Hells Angels leader's mother after 5 days missing. The bikers led her to safety. But what Emily didn't know was that saving Eleanor Keller would expose the very reason she was running and force her to face the one threat she thought she'd left behind. The sun was falling fast when Emily Navarro found her. Eleanor Keller stood near the edge of the old trail, trembling, soaked in sweat, her silver hair tangled with dirt and leaves. Her eyes were distant, empty, like she'd forgotten where she was or how she got there. 5 days. 5 days missing in the wilderness around Reading, and the person who found her wasn't a search team, a volunteer, or a family member. It was a 17-year-old runaway who'd been sleeping behind gas stations and washing her face in public restrooms. Emily's breath caught in her chest. She'd been tracking Eleanor's disappearance for days, piecing together rumors, following trails no one else noticed, a scarf abandoned near the road, footprints dried into the dirt, someone at a diner mentioning an older woman wandering toward the hills. Emily didn't plan to be a hero, she just couldn't stop searching. Maybe because Eleanor reminded her of someone kind, someone she'd lost. "Ma'am." Emily's voice cracked as she stepped closer, her hands shaking. "Are you okay?" Eleanor turned slowly, her gaze unfocused. She didn't answer. Emily knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on the woman's arm. Eleanor's skin was cold despite the heat. Her lips were dry, cracked. She was barely standing. "I'm gonna help you," Emily whispered. "I promise." She pulled out the cheap burner phone she'd been carrying and dialed 911. Her fingers were numb, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. The operator asked questions. Emily answered as calmly as she could, giving the location, describing Eleanor's condition. She stayed on the line, kneeling in the dirt, holding Eleanor's hand, like it was the only thing keeping the woman tethered to the world. Eleanor squeezed back. It was faint, weak, but it was there. Emily's throat tightened. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. She couldn't afford to break down. Not now. Not here. "They're coming," Emily said softly. "You're gonna be okay." Eleanor's lips moved, forming words Emily couldn't quite hear. She leaned closer. "Jonathan." The name hit Emily like a punch to the chest, her younger brother's name, the boy she'd left behind when she ran, the boy she was trying to survive long enough to save. Eleanor's eyes finally focused, locking onto Emily's face. For a moment the fog lifted. She saw her, really saw her. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered. Emily nodded, her voice too broken to respond. Minutes passed like hours. The sound of sirens grew louder, cutting through the quiet evening air. But before the ambulance arrived, Emily heard something else. Engines, deep, rumbling, powerful. Motorcycles. Her stomach dropped. She stood quickly, instinctively stepping back, ready to disappear into the trees. But Eleanor's hand tightened around hers, holding her in place. "Don't go," Eleanor murmured. "Please." Emily froze. The motorcycles roared closer, kicking up dust as they rolled to a stop. 6 bikes. 7. Men in leather vests, their faces hard, their eyes scanning the scene with the precision of people who'd seen too much. At the front was a man in his 40s, broad-shouldered, his jaw tight, his hands gripping the handlebars like he was holding himself back from something. Jonathan Keller. He swung off his bike and moved toward them, his boots heavy against the ground. His eyes went straight to his mother, and for a split second, Emily saw something crack in his expression. Relief. Guilt. Fear. "Mum," he breathed, dropping to his knees beside her. Eleanor smiled weakly, reaching for his face. "Jonathan, I got lost." "I know," he said, his voice rough. "I know, Ma. I'm here now." Then his eyes shifted to Emily. She stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped around herself, her body tense like a rabbit ready to bolt. Jonathan studied her, young, too young to be out here alone. Her clothes were worn, her face smudged with dirt, her eyes exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with one bad night. "You found her?" he asked. Emily nodded, her voice barely audible. "I called the ambulance." Jonathan's gaze softened just slightly. "You stayed with her?" "I wasn't going to leave her alone," Emily said quietly. Behind Jonathan, the other bikers dismounted, their eyes on the girl who'd saved their leader's mother. One of them, a man with a grey beard and steady hands, stepped forward, Caleb Hargrove. He didn't say anything, but the way he looked at Emily wasn't suspicion. It was respect. The ambulance arrived moments later, paramedics rushing to Eleanor's side. Jonathan stayed close, holding his mother's hand as they checked her vitals, loaded her onto the stretcher. Emily stepped back, blending into the shadows, hoping no one would ask her name. Hoping no one would ask questions she couldn't afford to answer, but Jonathan turned back. "Wait!" Emily stopped, her heart hammering. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Giving her name meant being seen. Being seen meant being found. "Emily," she finally said. Jonathan studied her for a long moment. "Thank you, Emily." She nodded, unable to speak. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens fading into the distance, the bikers lingered. Jonathan walked back to his motorcycle, but he didn't leave. He stood there watching Emily, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle he didn't have all the pieces to yet. Caleb leaned toward him, his voice low. "She's alone, John." Jonathan didn't respond right away. He glanced at Emily again, 17, scared and standing on the edge of disappearing. "I know," he said quietly. Emily felt their eyes on her, felt the weight of being noticed for the first time in months. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs wouldn't move. Something about the way Jonathan looked at her, not with pity, not with suspicion, but with something close to understanding, kept her frozen in place. "You got somewhere to go?" Jonathan asked. Emily's jaw tightened. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." She didn't answer. Jonathan exchanged a glance with Caleb, then looked back at Emily. "You hungry?" Emily's stomach twisted at the word. She couldn't remember the last real meal she'd had. "I said I'm fine," she repeated, her voice harder this time. Jonathan nodded slowly. He didn't push. Instead, he reached into his vest and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a flyer with a phone number and an address. "If you need anything," he said, holding it out to her, "call." Emily stared at the paper but didn't take it. Jonathan set it on the ground between them and stepped back. The engines roared to life again. One by one, the bikers rolled out, disappearing down the road. Jonathan was the last to leave. He looked at Emily one more time, his expression unreadable. Then he was gone. Emily stood alone in the fading light, the sound of motorcycles echoing in the distance. She looked down at the paper on the ground. She didn't pick it up. Not yet. But she didn't walk away either. For the first time in a long time, Emily Navarro didn't know what to do. She'd spent months running, hiding, surviving. And in one single moment, saving a stranger, she'd done the one thing she swore she'd never do again. She'd let someone see her. Before we continue, tell me from which city and country you're watching. Stories like this reach farther than we imagine. The story spread fast. By the next morning, everyone in Reading knew about the runaway girl who'd found Eleanor Keller. The local news picked it up. Missing woman found after 5 days, saved by young stranger. People at diners whispered about it. Gas station clerks asked if anyone had seen her. Emily's face wasn't on TV, but her name was everywhere, and that terrified her. Emily sat on the curb outside a 24-hour laundromat, her backpack pressed against her chest, her eyes scanning every car that passed. She hadn't slept. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow felt like someone coming for her. She'd spent months being invisible, and in one night, she'd become the most visible person in town. She couldn't stay here. But she couldn't leave either. Not yet. Not until she turned 18. Not until she could go back for Liam, her younger brother, 15 years old, still trapped in the same house she'd escaped from, the house where their parents chose bottles over their kids, where yelling turned into broken dishes, and broken dishes turned into doors slamming in the middle of the night. Emily had tried to take Liam with her when she ran, but he wouldn't go. He was scared. He thought things would get better. She knew they wouldn't. So she ran alone, promising herself she'd come back for him. She just needed to survive long enough, just needed to make it to 18, get legal custody, and bring him somewhere safe. But now people knew her name, and if people knew her name, someone would come looking. Emily's phone buzzed, the burner she used for emergencies. She pulled it out, her hands shaking. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press the green button. "Emily?" The voice was calm, steady, male. "Who is this?" she asked, her voice tight. "It's Jonathan Keller." Her breath caught. She stood up, glancing around like he might be watching her right now. "How did you get this number?" "You called 911 from it yesterday," he said simply. "I have a friend who helped me find it." Emily's stomach twisted. If he could find her number, who else could? "What do you want?" she asked. There was a pause. Then Jonathan said, "My mum's asking for you." Emily blinked. "What?" "She woke up this morning. First thing she said was your name. She wants to thank you." Emily's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. "You don't have to come," Jonathan continued. "But if you want to, she's at Mercy General, room 304. "I can't," Emily said quickly. "Why not?" I can't." Another pause, this one longer. "Emily," Jonathan said quietly, "if you're in some kind of trouble." "I'm not," she lied. "Okay." He didn't sound convinced. "But if you change your mind, the offer stands, and Emily—" "Yeah? Thank you for what you did. Not a lot of people would have stayed." The line went dead. Emily stared at the phone, her chest tight. She wanted to go. She wanted to see Eleanor, to know she was okay. But walking into a hospital meant cameras, questions, records. It meant being seen by people who might recognize her, people who might call the wrong person. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and started walking. 2 days passed. Emily stayed on the move, sleeping in different spots each night, avoiding places she'd been before. But the story wouldn't die. People kept talking about her. Some called her a hero. Others wondered why a teenage girl was alone in the first place. A few asked the question Emily dreaded most. Where are her parents? On the 3rd day, Emily saw him. A man in a cheap suit, standing outside the library talking to a police officer. He had a folder in his hand and a photo he kept showing people. Emily couldn't see the picture from where she stood, but she didn't need to. She knew it was her. Her chest tightened. Her legs felt weak. She turned and walked in the opposite direction, her pace quickening with every step. She didn't run. Running drew attention. But her heart was racing like she'd sprinted a mile. Someone was looking for her. And they were close. That night, Emily made a mistake. She went to the hospital. She didn't plan to. She told herself she wouldn't. But something pulled her there. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the fact that Eleanor Keller was the first person in months who'd looked at her like she mattered. Emily slipped through the side entrance, keeping her hood up, her head down. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, counting floors until she reached the 3rd. The hallway was quiet, only a few nurses moving between rooms. Emily found 304 and stopped outside the door. She could hear voices inside. Jonathan's and a woman's, soft, warm, older. Eleanor. Emily's hand hovered over the door handle. She almost turned back. But then Eleanor's voice drifted through the crack in the door. "I hope she comes back. That girl saved my life." Emily's eyes burned. She pushed the door open. Jonathan was sitting beside the bed, his jacket draped over the chair. Eleanor was propped up on pillows, her face pale but her eyes bright. When she saw Emily, her entire expression lit up. "Oh, sweetheart," Eleanor breathed. "You came." Emily stepped inside slowly, unsure. Jonathan stood, his eyes locking onto hers. He didn't look angry. He looked relieved. "Hi," Emily said quietly. Eleanor reached out a hand, and Emily crossed the room, taking it gently. Eleanor's grip was weak, but warm. "I wanted to thank you," Eleanor said, her voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to help me, but you did. I couldn't just leave you there," Emily said. Eleanor smiled, her eyes glistening. "You remind me of someone." Emily's chest tightened. "Who?" "Me," Eleanor said softly. "When I was your age, running from something I thought I couldn't face." Emily's breath hitched. She didn't know what to say. Jonathan cleared his throat. "Mom's been asking about you non-stop. Wouldn't let it go." Eleanor squeezed Emily's hand. "Because I knew you needed something too." Emily pulled her hand back, her walls going up. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," Eleanor said gently, "and that's okay." Emily looked away, blinking hard. She couldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Jonathan stepped forward. "Emily, if someone's looking for you—" "They are," she said before she could stop herself. The room went quiet. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Who?" Emily shook her head. "It doesn't matter." "It does if they're trying to hurt you." "They're not trying to hurt me," Emily said, her voice breaking. "They're trying to take me back, and I can't go back. I can't." Eleanor's face softened. "Why not, sweetheart?" Emily's hands were shaking now. "Because my brother's still there, and if I go back I'll never get out again. I'll never be able to save him." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Jonathan exchanged a look with his mother. Then he turned back to Emily. "How old are you?" he asked. 17, Emily whispered. "I turn 18 in 4 months." Jonathan nodded slowly. "And then you can get custody." "If I'm still free," Emily said. "If they don't find me first." Eleanor reached out again, and this time Emily didn't pull away. "Then we won't let them," Eleanor said firmly. Emily's eyes widened. "What?" Jonathan crossed his arms, his expression hardening with resolve. "You saved my mother's life. That means something. And it means you're not facing this alone." Emily shook her head. "You don't understand. If they find out you're helping me—" "Let them try," Jonathan said. The door opened. Caleb Hargrove stepped inside, his eyes moving from Jonathan to Emily. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her, the same way he had that first night, like he saw something worth protecting. "Word's out," Caleb said quietly. "Someone's asking around town about a runaway girl, showing a photo." Emily's stomach dropped. Jonathan's jaw clenched. "How close?" "Close enough," Caleb said. Emily stood, panic flooding her chest. "I have to go." "No," Jonathan said firmly. "You don't. You don't get it." "I do get it," Jonathan cut her off. "And I'm telling you, you're not running anymore. Not alone." Emily stared at him, her heart pounding. Eleanor reached for her hand one more time. "Let us help you, sweetheart. Please." Emily's throat burned. She wanted to say yes, but trust was something she'd learned to live without. Before she could answer, Caleb spoke again. "They're coming to the hospital tomorrow, asking questions." Emily's blood ran cold. Jonathan looked at Caleb, then back at Emily. "Then we move tonight." "Move where?" Emily whispered. Jonathan's eyes were steady, unwavering. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they can't touch you." Emily didn't know if she believed him, but for the first time in months, she wanted to. "Tell me, would you have done the same if you were in his place?" He didn't know that by tomorrow, everything he feared would come knocking again. The safe house wasn't what Emily expected. It was a garage on the outskirts of town, surrounded by open land and hidden behind a row of trees. Inside, motorcycles lined the walls, tools hung from pegboards, and the smell of motor oil mixed with old leather. A single couch sat against the back wall, a blanket draped over it. A small table. A coffee maker, nothing fancy, but it was quiet, and for the first time in weeks Emily felt like she could breathe. Jonathan pulled his bike to a stop outside, Caleb right behind him. Emily climbed off the back of Jonathan's motorcycle, her legs shaky, her mind racing. She'd never been on a bike before tonight. The speed, the wind, the rumble beneath her, it had felt like flying and falling at the same time. "You'll stay here tonight," Jonathan said, dismounting. No one knows about this place except us. Emily looked around, her arms wrapped tight around herself. How long? As long as it takes, Jonathan said. Takes for what? Jonathan met her eyes. For us to figure out who's looking for you and how to keep them away. Emily shook her head. You can't stop them, they have rights, legal rights. So do you, Caleb said, his voice low and steady. Emily let out a bitter laugh. Not until I'm 18. Until then, I'm just a runaway. And runaways get sent back. Jonathan leaned against his bike, studying her. Who are they, the people looking for you? Emily hesitated. Saying it out loud made it real, made it harder to pretend she could outrun it forever. My aunt and uncle, she finally said. They took me and my brother in after my parents, after things got bad. But they didn't want us. They just wanted the checks that came with us. Caleb's jaw tightened. They're not violent, Emily added quickly. They don't care, and my brother's still there, Liam, he's 15, and I promised him I'd come back. So, why did you leave? Jonathan asked. Emily's throat tightened. Because staying was killing me, and I thought if I could just make it to 18, I could go back and get him out legally. No one could stop me then. But now they know where you are, Caleb said. Emily nodded. And if they find me before my birthday, they'll take me back. And I'll lose any chance of getting Liam out. Jonathan exchanged a glance with Caleb, then he pushed off his bike and walked toward Emily. You saved my mother's life, he said quietly. That's not something I take lightly, and it's not something I'm going to let go unreturned. Emily looked up at him, her eyes burning. You don't owe me anything. Yeah, Jonathan said. I do. Inside the garage, Emily sat on the couch while Jonathan made coffee. Caleb disappeared outside to make a call. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Emily pulled her knees to her chest, staring at the concrete floor, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 3 days. Jonathan handed her a mug. She took it, the warmth seeping into her cold hands. My mum has Alzheimer's, Jonathan said, sitting on the edge of the table across from her. Early stages. She still has good days, but the bad ones, they're getting worse. Emily looked up at him. I've been taking care of her for 2 years, Jonathan continued, making sure she takes her meds, keeping her on a schedule, watching her so she doesn't wander off. But I slipped up. One time. Just one. And she was gone. His voice cracked slightly, and Emily saw the guilt etched into his face. I thought I'd lost her, Jonathan said. I thought I'd failed the one person who never gave up on me. Emily's chest tightened. You didn't fail her. Jonathan met her eyes. Neither did you. With your brother. Emily looked away, blinking hard. I left him. You survived, Jonathan said firmly. That's not the same as leaving. And when you're 18, you're going back for him. That's more than most people would do. Emily's hands trembled around the mug. She wanted to believe him, but guilt was a weight she'd been carrying for so long, she didn't know how to put it down. The door opened, and Caleb stepped back inside. His face was hard, unreadable. What is it? Jonathan asked. Caleb glanced at Emily, then back at Jonathan. They're at the hospital asking about her, showing a photo to the staff. Emily's stomach dropped. Did anyone talk? Jonathan asked. Not yet, Caleb said, but it's only a matter of time before someone does. Jonathan stood, his jaw tight. Then we make sure she's not there when they come looking. Emily set the mug down, her hands shaking. This is my problem. You shouldn't be dragging yourselves into this. You're not dragging us anywhere, Jonathan said. We're choosing to stand with you, there's a difference. Emily's throat burned. Why? Jonathan crouched down in front of her, his eyes level with hers. Because my mum saw something in you, and she's never wrong about people. She looked at you and saw someone worth saving, so that's what we're going to do. Emily's vision blurred. She couldn't remember the last time someone fought for her. Not since her grandmother died. Not since she was small and the world still felt safe. I don't know how to do this, Emily whispered. Trust people. Let them help. You already did, Jonathan said gently, when you stayed with my mum, when you didn't run. Emily wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. I almost did. But you didn't, Jonathan said. That's what matters. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of voices outside. She sat up quickly, her heart racing, her body tense and ready to run. But when she looked out the window, she saw Jonathan and Caleb standing with 3 other bikers. They were talking in low voices, their expressions serious. Emily stepped outside, the cool morning air hitting her face. The men turned to look at her. "Morning," Jonathan said. Emily nodded, her eyes moving from face to face. She recognized one of them, the older man with the grey beard who'd been there the night she found Eleanor. Another was a woman, mid-40s with sharp eyes and a leather vest covered in patches. The third was younger, maybe mid-20s, with tattoos running up his arms. "This is Rachel," Jonathan said, gesturing to the woman. "Marcus, and you already know Caleb." Emily nodded again, unsure what to say. "We've been talking," Jonathan continued, "and we've decided. You're not facing this alone. Whatever happens, we've got your back." Emily's chest tightened. "You don't even know me." "We know enough," Rachel said, her voice firm but kind. "You saved Eleanor, that makes you family." Emily blinked, the word hitting her harder than she expected. Family. "But there's something you need to understand," Jonathan said. "If we do this, we do it right. No more running, no more hiding. We face this head on." Emily's hands clenched into fists. "And if they take me anyway?" "They won't," Caleb said quietly. "You can't promise that," Emily said, her voice breaking. "No," Jonathan said. "But I can promise we'll fight like hell to stop it." Emily looked at each of them, searching their faces for doubt, for hesitation, but all she saw was resolve. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Jonathan stepped closer. "Because you did something most people wouldn't. You stayed, you helped. You didn't ask for anything in return. That's rare, and that's worth protecting." Emily's eyes burned. She wanted to argue, to push them away, to protect them from the mess her life had become, but she was so tired, tired of running, tired of being alone, tired of carrying everything by herself. "Okay," she whispered. Jonathan nodded. "Okay." Later that afternoon, Emily sat outside the garage, her back against the wall, staring at the horizon. The sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the dirt. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Rachel approaching. "Mind if I sit?" Rachel asked. Emily shook her head. Rachel lowered herself to the ground beside her, stretching her legs out. "I know this is scary," Rachel said. "Letting people in, trusting strangers." Emily didn't respond. "I was like you once," Rachel continued. "Not a runaway, but lost. I didn't think anyone would care if I disappeared. And then I met these idiots." She smiled faintly. "They proved me wrong." Emily glanced at her. "How?" "By showing up," Rachel said simply. "When I didn't ask, when I didn't think I deserved it, they just showed up." Emily looked down at her hands. "What if I let them down?" "You won't," Rachel said. "And even if you stumble, we'll catch you. That's what family does." Emily's throat tightened. "I don't know how to be part of a family anymore." "You will," Rachel said gently. "Give it time." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the wind filling the space between them. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her stomach twisting when she saw the name on the screen. Unknown number. She answered, her voice shaky. "Hello?" "Emily." Her blood ran cold. She knew that voice. "Uncle Greg," she whispered. "We know where you are," he said, his tone flat, "and we're coming to bring you home." Emily's hands shook. "I'm not coming back." "You don't have a choice," Greg said. "You're a minor. You belong to us until you're 18. "I don't belong to anyone," Emily said, her voice stronger now. "We'll see about that," Greg said. "We'll be in Reading tomorrow, and when we find you, you're coming back, with or without a fight." The line went dead. Emily sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Rachel was watching her, concern etched into her face. "What is it?" Rachel asked. Emily lowered the phone slowly, her voice barely audible. "They're coming." Rachel stood immediately. "I'll get Jonathan." Emily stayed on the ground, her chest tight, her mind racing. She'd known this moment would come. She'd been running from it for months, but now that it was here, she didn't know if she was strong enough to face it. Inside the garage, voices rose. Plans were being made, calls were being placed. The bikers were mobilizing, circling around her like a wall she didn't ask for but desperately needed. And for the first time, Emily realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. But the people she'd been running from weren't going to stop, and tomorrow everything would come to a head. If you believe no one should face fear alone, like this video and tell us, what would you have done? That night, a single decision would change the club forever. They came at noon. 2 cars pulled up to the diner on Main Street where Jonathan had arranged to meet them. Emily watched from across the street, hidden inside Rachel's truck, her hands gripping the seat so hard her knuckles turned white. Jonathan stood outside with Caleb, Marcus, and 3 other bikers. They weren't trying to intimidate. They were just standing their ground. Greg and Linda stepped out of the first car, Emily's uncle and aunt. Greg wore slacks and a button-down shirt, his face tired and annoyed. Linda looked the same as always, thin, nervous, her eyes darting around like she wanted to be anywhere else. Behind them, a woman in a blazer emerged from the second car. A social worker, Emily guessed, someone official. Emily's chest tightened. This was it. Jonathan walked forward, his hands at his sides, his posture calm but firm. Greg looked him up and down, his expression unimpressed. "You Jonathan Keller?" Greg asked. "I am," Jonathan said. "Where's Emily?" "Safe," Jonathan said simply. Greg's jaw tightened. "She's a minor. She belongs with her legal guardians, that's us." "She doesn't want to go back," Jonathan said. "That's not her choice," the woman in the blazer said, stepping forward. "I'm Karen Moss, with Child Protective Services. Emily Navarro is 17 years old. Until she turns 18, she's under the custody of her aunt and uncle. We're here to bring her home." "Home," Jonathan repeated, his voice hard. "Is that what you call it?" Greg's face flushed. "What we call it is none of your business." "It is when she comes to us asking for protection," Caleb said quietly. Karen frowned. "Protection from what?" "From going back to a place that hurt her," Jonathan said. Linda shifted uncomfortably, looking down at her feet. Greg shot her a look, then turned back to Jonathan. "Emily's dramatic," Greg said. "She always has been. We fed her, clothed her, gave her a roof over her head. She ran because she didn't like the rules." "Rules?" Marcus said, his voice low. "Or control?" Greg's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you people?" "We're the ones who were there when she needed help," Jonathan said. "Where were you?" "We didn't ask for this," Linda said suddenly, her voice shaking. "We didn't ask to raise someone else's kids." The words hung in the air, brutal and honest. "Then why are you here?" Rachel asked from behind them. Linda didn't answer. Greg's face hardened. "Because it's the right thing to do," Greg said. "And because we're responsible for her until she's 18, or because you lose the checks if she's gone," Caleb said flatly. Greg's face went red. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Caleb said. Karen held up a hand. "Look, I understand emotions are high, but the law is clear. Emily is a minor. She needs to return to her legal guardians." "And if she refuses?" Jonathan asked. "Then we involve the police," Karen said, "and it gets a lot more complicated for everyone." Jonathan's jaw clenched. He looked at Caleb, then back at Karen. "She saved my mother's life," Jonathan said quietly. "Eleanor Keller. Maybe you heard about it. 5 days missing, and Emily found her, stayed with her, called for help. She didn't have to. But she did." Karen's expression softened slightly. "I did hear about that. It was a brave thing to do." "It was more than brave," Jonathan said. "It was selfless. And the reason she was out there in the first place is because she was surviving on her own, because going back to them wasn't an option." Greg scoffed. "She's feeding you lies." Then prove it, Jonathan said. Let someone investigate. Let someone talk to her brother. Let someone look at what's really happening in that house. Linda's face paled. Greg's hands balled into fists. There's nothing to investigate, Greg said tightly. Then you won't mind if we ask, Caleb said. Karen looked between them, her expression uncertain. This isn't how this works. I can't just— Yes, you can, Rachel said, stepping forward. You can choose to listen. You can choose to ask questions before dragging a scared kid back to a place she ran from. Karen's jaw tightened. She looked at Greg and Linda, then back at Jonathan. Where is Emily? Karen asked. Close, Jonathan said, but she's not coming out until she knows she's safe. She is safe, Karen said. The law protects her. The law didn't protect her before, Jonathan said. Why should she trust it now? Karen didn't have an answer. Greg took a step forward. Enough of this. You're harboring a runaway. That's a crime, and if you don't produce her right now, I'm calling the police. Jonathan didn't move. Go ahead. Greg pulled out his phone, his hand shaking with anger. But before he could dial, a voice cut through the tension. Wait. Everyone turned. Emily stepped out of the truck. Rachel reached for her, but Emily shook her head. She walked across the street slowly, her heart pounding, her legs trembling. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she didn't. She kept walking until she stood beside Jonathan. Greg's face shifted from anger to something almost relieved. Emily, get in the car. Emily didn't move. Emily, Linda said, her voice softer. Please, let's just go home. Emily looked at her aunt, and for a moment she saw something she hadn't expected. Exhaustion, guilt, maybe even regret. But it wasn't enough. I'm not going back, Emily said, her voice steady. You don't have a choice, Greg said. Yes, I do, Emily said. I turn 18 in 4 months, and when I do, I'm going back for Liam. Linda's eyes widened. Liam's fine. No, he's not, Emily said, her voice breaking. He's stuck in the same house I ran from, and I promised him I'd come back. You can't take him, Greg said. You're just a kid. I'll be an adult, Emily said. And I'll have legal rights, and if you try to stop me, I'll fight you in court. Greg laughed bitterly. With what money? What lawyer? Jonathan stepped forward. With mine. Greg's laughter died. You think I'm bluffing? Jonathan said. Try me. Karen looked at Emily, her expression conflicted. Emily, if there are issues at home, there are proper channels. I tried the proper channels, Emily said. I told a teacher once. She called CPS. You know what happened? They did a home visit, asked a few questions and left. Nothing changed. Karen's face tightened. I don't trust the system, Emily continued, because the system didn't save me. I saved myself. And now these people are trying to help me finish what I started. Karen was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Greg and Linda. I'm going to need to speak with Liam, she said. What? Greg said. Why? Because if there are concerns about the home environment, it's my job to investigate, Karen said. There are no concerns, Greg said. Then you won't mind me talking to him, Karen said firmly. Greg's face went pale. Linda looked like she might cry. This is ridiculous, Greg muttered. Emily's lying. She's always been— I'm not lying, Emily said, her voice stronger now. And Liam will tell you the truth if you let him. Karen looked at Emily, then at Jonathan, then back at Greg and Linda. I'm not taking Emily today, Karen said finally. Greg's eyes widened. You can't— I can, Karen said, because I have concerns, and until I investigate those concerns, Emily stays where she is. She's staying with bikers, Greg said. That's not safe. She's staying with people who care about her, Jonathan said. That's more than you ever did. Greg's face twisted with anger, but he didn't respond. Linda was staring at the ground, her hands shaking. Karen turned to Emily. I need you to stay in contact with me, and I need you to cooperate with the investigation. Emily nodded. I will. Karen handed her a card. Call me if anything changes. And Emily? Yeah? You did the right thing, Karen said quietly. Speaking up. Emily's throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak. Greg and Linda got back in their car, without another word. The engine started and they drove away, leaving nothing but dust and silence. Karen looked at Jonathan one more time. "I'll be in touch." "We'll be here," Jonathan said. Karen got in her car and left. Emily stood frozen, her body trembling. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She'd faced them. She'd spoken. And she was still standing. Jonathan put a hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" Emily let out a shaky breath. "I don't know." Rachel walked over and pulled her into a hug. Emily stiffened at first, then slowly, carefully let herself lean in. "You were so brave," Rachel whispered. Emily's eyes burned. "I was terrified." "That's what brave is," Rachel said. Caleb nodded at Jonathan. "She's one of us now." Jonathan looked at Emily, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes she hadn't expected. Pride. "Yeah," Jonathan said quietly. "She is." That night, they gathered at the garage. Emily sat on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, a mug of hot chocolate in her hands. The bikers were scattered around the room, talking quietly, their presence a steady comfort. Eleanor was there too. Jonathan had brought her, despite the late hour. She sat beside Emily, holding her hand. "You remind me so much of myself," Eleanor said softly. "When I was young, I thought I had to do everything alone. I thought asking for help made me weak." Emily looked at her. "What changed?" Eleanor smiled. "I met people who showed me that strength isn't about being alone. It's about knowing when to let others stand with you." Emily's chest tightened. Eleanor squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore, sweetheart. You have us, and we're not going anywhere." Emily's vision blurred. She nodded, unable to speak. Jonathan walked over and crouched in front of her. 4 months, he said, "and then we go get Liam. Together." Emily's breath hitched. "You'd really do that?" "We're family now," Jonathan said simply, "and family doesn't leave people behind." For the first time in years, Emily believed it. From that moment on, she was no longer an outsider. 4 months later. The morning air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine and fresh coffee. Emily stood outside the garage, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching the sun rise over the hills. She'd turned 18 2 weeks ago. Legally, she was an adult now. Free. But freedom didn't feel the way she'd imagined. It felt heavier, more real, like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. Behind her, the sound of motorcycles rumbled to life. Jonathan, Caleb, Rachel, Marcus. They were getting ready. Today was the day they'd been planning for months. Today they were going to get Liam. Emily turned as Jonathan walked over, his leather vest worn and familiar now. He handed her a smaller vest, black, with the club's patch on the back. Not a full member's vest, but something close, something that said she belonged. "You don't have to wear it if you don't want to," Jonathan said. Emily ran her fingers over the patch, her throat tight. "What does it mean?" "It means you're family," Jonathan said simply, "and family protects each other." Emily slipped it on. It fit perfectly. Rachel came over, her eyes soft. "You ready?" Emily took a breath. "I don't know." "That's okay," Rachel said. "We'll be right there with you." The drive to Greg and Linda's house took an hour. Emily sat on the back of Jonathan's bike, her arms wrapped around his waist, her mind racing. She hadn't seen Liam in almost a year. She didn't know what he looked like now, didn't know if he'd forgiven her for leaving, didn't know if he even wanted to come with her, but she had to try. When they pulled up to the house, Emily's stomach twisted. It looked the same. Small, worn, the lawn overgrown, the paint peeling. She'd spent so many nights in that house, lying awake, counting down the days until she could leave. Now she was back. But this time, she wasn't alone. Jonathan cut the engine. The other bikes followed. The street was quiet, but Emily could feel eyes watching from behind curtains. The bikers didn't care. They dismounted, standing in a loose circle around Emily, a silent wall of support. Karen Moss pulled up in her sedan a moment later. She'd been working with Emily for months, navigating the legal process, filing paperwork, building a case. She stepped out, folder in hand, her expression calm but determined. "You ready?" Karen asked Emily. Emily nodded, though her hands were shaking. Karen walked to the front door and knocked. Emily stayed back, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The door opened. Linda stood there, her face pale, her eyes tired. She looked older than Emily remembered. When she saw Emily, something flickered across her face. Regret, maybe, or relief. "He's ready," Linda said quietly. Emily blinked. "What?" "Liam," Linda said. "He's been packed for a week." Emily's breath caught. Linda stepped aside, and there he was. Liam stood in the hallway, a duffel bag at his feet, his hair longer than she remembered, his eyes wide and uncertain. He looked scared, but when he saw Emily, his face broke into something between a smile and tears. "Em," he whispered. Emily's vision blurred. She walked forward slowly, her legs shaking, and when she reached him, she pulled him into a hug so tight she thought she might never let go. "I told you I'd come back," she whispered. Liam buried his face in her shoulder, his body trembling. "I didn't think you would." "I promised," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I promised." Karen stepped inside, handling the paperwork with Linda. Greg was nowhere to be seen. Emily didn't ask. She didn't care. All that mattered was Liam. After a few minutes, Karen came back out. "It's done. He's legally in your custody now." Emily looked at her brother, then at Karen. "That's it?" Karen smiled softly. "That's it. You're free." Emily's legs nearly gave out. Jonathan was there, steadying her. "You did it," he said quietly. Emily looked at Liam, then at the bikers standing behind her, then at the house she'd run from all those months ago. She had done it. They didn't go straight back to Reading. Instead, Jonathan took them to the same trail where Emily had found Eleanor. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dirt path, and the air smelled like wildflowers and dust. Emily and Liam walked side by side, the bikers a respectful distance behind. "What's it like?" Liam asked quietly. "Living with them?" Emily glanced back at Jonathan, Rachel, Caleb. "It's different. They're loud. They argue. They tease each other." Liam frowned. "That sounds bad." "It's not," Emily said, smiling faintly, "because they also show up every time, no matter what, and they don't ask for anything in return." Liam looked down at his shoes. "I was so mad at you for leaving." Emily's chest tightened. "I know. But I get it now," Liam said. "You couldn't save both of us. Not then." Emily stopped walking, turning to face him. "I'm sorry, Liam. I'm so sorry I left you there." Liam shook his head, his eyes wet. "You came back. That's what matters." Emily pulled him into another hug, and this time she let herself cry. That evening they gathered at the garage again. Eleanor was there, her face bright despite the late hour. She hugged Liam like he was her own grandson, and Liam, who'd been so guarded all day, finally relaxed. Jonathan handed Emily a small box. She opened it carefully. Inside was a silver pendant, simple, engraved with a single word, family. "Eleanor wanted you to have it," Jonathan said. "She wore it for years. Said it reminded her that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up." Emily's hands trembled as she lifted the pendant. Eleanor reached over and clasped it around her neck. "You showed up for me," Eleanor said softly. "And now you've shown up for him. That's what family does." Emily touched the pendant, her throat too tight to speak. Liam sat beside her, his eyes wide as he took in the room, the bikers, the motorcycles, the warmth that filled the space. "Is this real?" he whispered to Emily. Emily looked around at Jonathan, who'd risked everything to protect her, at Rachel, who'd held her when she broke, at Caleb, who'd stood between her and danger without hesitation, at Eleanor, who'd seen something in her worth saving. "Yeah," Emily said quietly. "It's real." A month later, Emily stood outside the garage, watching the sun set. Liam was inside, laughing at something Marcus said. He was adjusting, slowly. But he was safe, and that was enough. Jonathan walked over, leaning against the wall beside her. "You good?" he asked. Emily nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." "Your brother's fitting in," Jonathan said. Emily smiled. "He is." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sound of engines and laughter drifting from inside. "I never thought I'd find this," Emily said quietly. "A place where I belong." "You earned it," Jonathan said. Emily shook her head. "I just tried to survive." "That's more than most people do," Jonathan said. "And you didn't just survive. You saved someone, you fought, you came back for your brother. That's not survival. That's courage." Emily's eyes burned. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have," Jonathan said. "But you didn't have to. That's the point." Emily looked at him, and for the first time she understood. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a family, a real one, built not on blood or obligation, but on choice, on loyalty, on love. And no one could take that away. If this story touched you, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. You're part of this family now. Sometimes the people who save others are the ones who needed saving most. And on that road, Emily finally found home.